It sounds ridiculous, but a pair of blue contact lenses ended up changing the direction of my entire trip.
Every city has a story, every journey leaves a mark. Welcome to Night Wolf Travels, we guide you through the dark.
By the time I arrived in Pattaya, it was early evening on Easter Sunday. The journey from Bangkok had gone smoothly enough, but by the time I got checked in, I had a more immediate problem. I was hungry, and I was completely out of Thai baht, not the ideal combination. So before anything else, I needed to exchange some money. One thing I immediately noticed was the exchange rate. Back in Koh Samui, I would be getting around 40 baht to the pound. Here on Second Road, I managed to get 43. Not a huge difference on paper, but over the course of a trip, it soon adds up. With fresh currency in my pocket, I headed over to my accommodation. This time I was staying at View Tale 6, a condo building directly opposite Myth Night on Second Road. The location is excellent. You are right in the middle of everything. Beach Road one way, Second Road the other, and plenty of nightlife within walking distance. If you would like a closer look, I have already done a full review on the channel. Link above. Check-in was straightforward. No issues, no dramas. Just enough time to unpack a few things before heading back out. At this point, it was getting late. I had not eaten since lunchtime, and my priorities were becoming increasingly simple. Food, then beer, in that order. I ended up walking down Beach Road towards Burger King near Soy 8. Not exactly fine dining, but it hit the spot. As I sat waiting for my food, one of my fellow countrymen decided to challenge me to an arm wrestle. The Thai lady with him told me he had been drinking all day. I politely declined. I really was not in the mood. All I had on my mind was food, and then getting into the nightlife. Looking back now, that is probably the last thing I clearly remember from that first evening. Not because anything dramatic happened afterwards, quite the opposite. What I remember most was not an event, it was a feeling. Something felt different, and I could not quite put my finger on what it was. The streets looked familiar, the bars were still there, the neon was still glowing, the city was still doing what Pattaya does. Yet something felt off, almost like an energy shift, not necessarily bad, just different, subtle, unsettling, like returning to a place you know well, and discovering that somebody has quietly rearranged all the furniture. Everything is technically the same, yet somehow it is not. At first I thought perhaps it was me. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was overthinking things. Maybe after traveling around Bangkok, Samui and Koh Phangan, my mood had simply changed. But as the days passed, that feeling never really went away. The more time I spent in Pattaya, the more I started noticing little things. Conversations felt different. Interactions felt different. The atmosphere felt different. It was not something I could easily measure. There was no single moment where I could point and say, there, that is what has changed. It was more a collection of small observations, feeling that the city had evolved again. One thing that stood out to me was the girls. Now, before anybody starts sharpening their keyboard in the comments section, hear me out. This is not criticism. It is simply an observation. The overall atmosphere felt more businesslike than I remembered, less playful, less relaxed, more transactional, as though a lot of the girls had simply grown tired of the game. Perhaps that is understandable. The world has changed, Thailand has changed, Pattaya has changed. Maybe the people working there have changed too. Of course, I could be completely wrong. Maybe it is just me getting old. Maybe I am seeing things differently now. Maybe nothing has changed at all. I would be genuinely interested to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you noticed it? Or is it all in my head? The strange thing is that despite all of this, Pattaya still had moments where the old magic appeared. Moments where everything seemed to click into place. Random nights. Random conversations. And over the next few days, I would discover that some of that magic was still very much alive. You just had to look a little harder to find it. Despite all my observations about Pattaya changing, every now and then something happens that reminds me why I keep coming back. The first of those moments happened on Soi Diana. I had not gone out with any great plan that night. To be fair, most of my better nights in Thailand seem to happen when I do not have one. I was simply wandering around, seeing where the evening took me. A beer here, a wander there, nothing particularly remarkable, until I reached the second roadside of Soi Diana. As I walked past one of the bars, a voice called out to me. I looked over and immediately understood why. The lady waving me over was absolutely stunning. The sort of girl that makes you stop mid-stride and completely forget where you were heading. So naturally, I changed direction. A few minutes later, I was sat in her bar, a beer in front of me, a pool cue in my hand, and any plans I may have had for the evening had quietly disappeared. Not that I was complaining. What struck me was not just her looks, although those certainly were not hurting. There was an easy energy about her, relaxed, playful, fun to be around, and she would be my second lady from Laos of this trip. At this point, Laos was quietly having a very strong tournament. She was the sort of company that makes time move quicker than it should. At 22 years old, it is fair to say she was not exactly difficult to look at, either. We played a few games of pool. One drink became two became several. The sort of gradual progression that everybody sees coming, except the person involved. Now and again I would have to take a second look at her just to make sure my eyes were not deceiving me. And if my beer goggles had kicked in, before long I was not thinking about where else to go. I was already exactly where I wanted to be. Eventually I decided to bar fine her and continue the night elsewhere. Who was I kidding? I had already decided that on the first beer. We headed over towards Soi Bukkao and ended up in the Rasta Bar, one of those places where the atmosphere seems to encourage poor decisions and good memories in equal measure. The music was good, the drinks were flowing, and the whole night seemed to come together effortlessly. This was one of those classic Pattaya nights. Nothing had been planned, nothing had been arranged, yet somehow everything had fallen into place. The Pattaya jigsaw had assembled itself. The funny thing is that these are often the nights you remember most, not because they are spectacular, but because they are completely unexpected. You head out expecting nothing, and somehow end up having a brilliant time. Thailand has always been good at that. Eventually we made our way back to my condo, and the evening continued exactly as you would expect. Some details are probably best left between me, her, and the walls of View Talay 6. The next morning, however, is what I remember most clearly. As we left the building together and stepped out into the daylight, I found myself looking at her properly for the first time. The bright lights of bars can be surprisingly forgiving. Daylight tends to be a little more honest. And honestly, I remember thinking, damn. You know those moments where you almost want to take a photograph, purely so you can remember a moment later? This was one of them, and I took one. She looked incredible, a genuine head-turner. One of the best-looking ladies I met during the entire trip. Now, before anyone gets carried away, I am not trying to turn this into a love story. Far from it. It was not that. We both knew exactly what it was, and that is perfectly fine. But every now and then you have one of those Thailand nights where everything simply lines up and goes your way. As we eventually went our separate ways, I found myself thinking about the strange feeling I would had when arriving in Pattaya. The feeling that something had changed. The feeling that some of the old magic had disappeared. Yet nights like this made me question that theory. Because despite all the changes, despite the city evolving, despite the atmosphere feeling different, the magic still appeared from time to time, maybe less often than before, but it was still there. And as it turned out, Pattaya was not quite finished with me yet, because a couple of nights later, another chance encounter would lead me somewhere completely different. This next time took me to walking streets somewhere I rarely visit these days. Too commercial, too expensive, and unlike the previous night, that story would not end quite so neatly. A couple of nights later, I found myself back on Second Road. No particular plan, no destination in mind, just a cold Heineken, some people watching, and seeing where the evening took me. Sometimes that is when Pattaya works best. I was sat in a fairly quiet bar near the live music venues on the complex. Nothing exciting was happening, until I noticed a lady in the bar next door. And she definitely noticed me. Now, I'm not saying she was deliberately trying to attract my attention, but let us just say she was not exactly trying to avoid it either. Every now and then she would glance over, a smile, a look with her piercing blue contact lenses, the occasional strategic bend over the pool table. You know the kind. She was showing plenty of cheeks. Eventually she gave me the nod, and I pointed to my unfinished beer. That beer did not last long though. I took the hint and went over and sat at the same bar. What followed was one of those random Thailand encounters that seems completely spontaneous at the time, although looking back, perhaps not quite as spontaneous as I would first thought. We got talking. I bought us a few drinks, and before long she asked me a question I was not expecting. Did I want to go to Walking Street? Of course I did. The funny thing is, I rarely bother with Walking Street these days. Too commercial, too expensive, too crowded. Most of the time, I would rather be elsewhere. But every now and then, it is worth a visit, especially when somebody else is doing the organizing. Short bus ride later, we were heading down Beach Road towards the bright lights. Walking Street was exactly as I remembered. Loud, busy, chaotic. A place that seems permanently stuck somewhere between entertainment venue, a social experiment. Our first stop was a Russian strip club. Now, if you have never been inside one of these places, they're a very different experience to your average Thai go-go or gents club. The drinks are way more expensive, around 240 baht for a beer. The dancers do get completely naked, and the pressure for tips arrives with remarkable efficiency. At one point, one of the dancers suggested a private show involving both herself and my lady for the evening. I briefly considered it. I think that would have been a great show. My wallet considered it less enthusiastically. My Thai companion looked even less enthusiastic, which was probably for the best. I attempted the classic excuse when they came calling for tips. I do not have any change. What did make me laugh was watching some of the reactions from tourists, who clearly were not expecting quite how naked the dancers were going to get, particularly a few Thai couples. You could almost see the moment reality caught up with expectation. After a while we moved on, and eventually found ourselves in the nightclub Lucifer, one of Pattaya's institutions. And it was here I started to notice something interesting. My companion seemed to know quite a few people, the staff, the security, various faces along the way. At first I not thought much of it, but slowly the picture became clearer. Maybe our chance meeting on Second Road had not been entirely left to fate after all. Still, I was having a good time, and sometimes overthinking Pattaya is the fastest way to ruin Pattaya, so I decided not to overanalyze it, at least not yet. Eventually we headed back, my condo at View Tale 6 on Second Road. The evening continued, and unfortunately so did another poor decision. Yes, it's become bareback mistake number 3. At the time it seemed like a great idea, as these things often do. Future me would eventually disagree, strongly. The next morning was considerably more relaxed. I hit it again, and after that she left. We arranged to meet again later that day, and I thought nothing more of it. Then Songkran happened, or more accurately, Songkran happened to me. I would somehow manage to forget that Pattaya starts celebrating early, a mistake I would only make once. I headed out wearing normal clothes, completely unprepared. Within minutes I was absolutely drenched, not slightly wet, not caught by a splash soaked through. The kind of wet where your clothes stop being clothes and simply become attached to your body. The kind of wet where you know you're staying wet for the rest of the evening, whether you like it or not. Eventually I met up with my walking street companion. Still damp, still uncomfortable, still trying to process what had just happened. She took me over to LK Metro, some of her friends worked, in a go-go bar. I sat down, bought drinks, got introduced around, and watched events unfold. The problem was that the evening gradually started feeling different from the one before. The attention I would enjoy 24 hours earlier seemed to be directed elsewhere. While I was sat talking to one of her friends, she was busy playing pool with various other guys, laughing, flirting, working the room. First I ignored it, then I noticed it, and could not stop noticing it. The reality is that Pattaya occasionally has a habit of reminding you exactly where you stand, and this felt like one of those moments. I am not saying I expected romance, far from it. I was not planning a wedding, but there was definitely a feeling of being manipulated, a feeling that perhaps I would misunderstood the situation, or maybe simply seen what I wanted to see. Either way, it left a bit of a sour taste, not enough to ruin the trip, not even enough to ruin the night, but enough to knock my ego slightly. And maybe that is part of Pattaya too. For every night where everything falls perfectly into place, there is another night waiting to bring you back down to earth. The funny thing is that both experiences happened within days of each other. One reminded me why I keep coming back. The other reminded me why you should never get too comfortable. The truth is, there were a few other ladies during my time in Pattaya. Some were fun, some were forgettable. A couple probably looked far better under neon lights than they did the following morning, the usual Pattaya lottery, but none of them really became part of the story. They were simply passing moments, in a city built on passing moments. As for Songkran itself, I enjoyed it, more than I expected actually. Once I accepted that staying dry was no longer an option. It is chaotic, it is fun. If you have never experienced it before, I would absolutely recommend trying it once, at least once. But would I specifically pay Songkran prices again? Probably not. This return flight alone cost me £1,400, roughly double what I would normally expect to pay. And while the experience was good, I am not convinced it was twice as good. One thing I did notice was that during Songkran, the entire dynamic of Pattaya changes. The girls seem more interested in water fights than drinks, more interested in soaking tourists than chatting to them. And to be fair, I can understand why. The city becomes one giant playground. For a few days, almost everything else takes a back seat. My time in Pattaya came to an end. I found myself thinking back to that strange feeling I would had on my first night. The feeling that something had changed. Pattaya felt different, colder in some ways, more transactional, less playful than I remembered, even with Songkran. Yet despite all of that, the magic still appeared, randomly, unexpectedly, just when you thought it had disappeared. Maybe that is why people keep coming back. Not because Pattaya is perfect, not because it has not changed, but because every now and then it still produces a night that could not have happened anywhere else. And for now at least, that was enough. If you are enjoying traveling through Thailand with me, hitting subscribe is the best way to make sure you do not miss the next adventure. And if you enjoyed this episode, leaving a like really helps the channel grow. Coming up in episode 4, the final leg of my trip, I head to Bangkok for one more final night of madness, where I land in a very sticky situation that still remains a mystery to me today. Be sure not to miss that. Until the next time.
Every city has a story, every journey leaves a mark. Welcome to Nightwolf Travels, we guide you through the dark.
The journey never ends.